the might, the power, the glory that was Rome.
The emperors and generals and senators certainly left their mark on the world, and we know a surprising amount about how they lived. But what about all those other Romans who didn't leave statues and monuments? What about the unnamed millions who never made it to the history books?
Most Roman citizens didn't live in marbled villas with mosaic floors and central heating. It's just that the buildings of the rich are all that remain. How ordinary Romans lived is, for the most part, unrecorded. Theirs is the hidden history of Rome.
Let me introduce you to an ordinary Roman citizen. We don't actually know his name, but I hope we won't mind if we call him Marcus for the sake of argument. Marcus was one of the thousands of people who died in Pompeii when Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD. Well, let's assume he was, say, 60 years old. What might he have seen in his lifetime? What sort of a life might Marcus have led?
In Marcus's day, Pompeii was a town of some 20,000 people. Let's assume that Marcus wasn't a member of the ruling elite, that he was an ordinary man working for a living. Well, let's make him a cobbler, making ordinary sandals for the ordinary Roman in the street, like himself. What kind of a town would he have been living in? And I've always imagined that life in Pompeii must have been pretty cool, with those lovely shady courtyards and the elegant colonnades and those fancy dining rooms with the frescoes on the walls. But was life really like that for the majority of Romans?
Lost from this shop, a bronze water pot, 65 sesterces reward to anyone who brings back the same. If he produces the thief, from whom we may rescue our property, 84 sesterces.
I bet whoever stole that pot wasn't dining in elegant frescoed rooms or arguing philosophy in shady colonnades. This was a society with a vast gulf between rich and poor. But maybe it wasn't always like that.
It's almost impossible to imagine what life was like for the poor. You have to go to a very poor third world country to get the standard of living. Fantastic difference between the very well-off and the poor. No cars, no fridges, no telephones. Pre-industrial poverty.
Archaeological evidence suggests that there was a time when the gap between the classes was not so wide. Before its absorption by Rome, Pompeii appears to have consisted of houses of mostly the same size, most with gardens and plenty of open spaces. But after Roman integration in the 1st century BC, the character of Pompeian society seems to have changed. And today, the Anglo-American project in Pompeii is piecing together the evidence for that change. The leader of the project, Rick Jones from the University of Bradford, believes that Romanization may have brought a widening of this gulf between rich and poor.
After we see the Roman takeover of the city, what had before then been 3 houses is knocked through into one great big house. So it's knocked right through here and right through inside there.
I mean, does that indicate that before it became Romanized, there was a slightly more equal society in Pompeii?
Well, it would seem so. It's hard to know how many people lived in the bigger house. There may be one big family with a number of servants and so forth. But it's clear that previously there were 3 families.
Not only did they seek to enlarge their properties, as the wealthy got wealthier, they also sought to distance themselves from their social inferiors. In a big house like this, the owners even began to insulate themselves from their domestic staff.
Later on, what you find when they put the mosaics in, they change the layout and, in fact, bring the servants' quarters away from one part of the house, and the servants in the kitchen go down this little corridor here. So we have a small doorway there.
I see. So, and that separates the servants from...
Shut the door, can't see them.
Marcus would have grown up in a society that was increasingly polarized. He would have seen some families getting richer, while poorer families lost their independent status. In the countryside, peasant farmers were bought out by the wealthy and sucked into the cities. Many country towns around Rome became ghost towns, and an urban tradesman like Marcus lived a very different life from the independent countryman of bygone times. He would have had nowhere to grow his own vegetables or keep a pig. He may not even have had anywhere to do his cooking. He would have been dependent on earning cash to buy food. And in the streets of Pompeii, we can see how Marcus's life would have been very different from his predecessors.
And yet another bar. I mean, that must be about the... This must be about the 50th bar we've come across.
Well, there's lots of them. Maybe they like to drink around here.
In Pompeii, it seems as if almost every other shop is a bar or quick snack counter. The urban poor, crowded into small apartments without the means or time to cook their own meals, generally relied on fast food and ready-made snacks from the cook shops.
Enter the Discover Atlantis The Lost Empire sweepstakes now. Call the toll-free number on your screen or log on to Discovery Channel's website, exn.ca, right now and complete the entry form. It's your chance to win Disney's Atlantis The Lost Empire on Disney DVD and a family trip for four to experience the mythical Atlantis Paradise Island Resort in the Bahamas. Call or log on right now and don't miss Disney's Atlantis The Lost Empire on Disney DVD and video January 29th.
Millions of women worldwide have chosen Nivea Visage Q10 as their anti-wrinkle cream. Nivea Visage Q10 Wrinkle Control with natural coenzyme Q10 visibly reduces the appearance of wrinkles.
Thank you, Q10.
Only from Nivea Visage.
AT&T Canada's broadband technology can carry your company's voice, video, and data around the world at speeds over 2 billion bits per second. Buckle up.
Although it seems private and personal, surfing the web can sometimes be quite invasive. With the new Internet Explorer 6 web browser built into Windows XP, you can surf the net with a new level of security and ease. It includes a multitude of customizable privacy settings, allowing you to protect your personal information from others who may be able to access it over the Internet. The My Picture toolbar automatically appears, giving access to the functions such as email and print pictures. You now have flexibility to surf the web with ease, resizing pictures found on web pages to get them to fit inside the dimensions of your web browser window. For even more information about Windows XP, visit the Microsoft website. I'm David Chalk. Thanks for watching.
Holiday bills arrived? Time for KFC's Chicken Lovers Feast with 3 extra pieces of our famous chicken and all the fixins. KFC, it's finger-licking good.
This isn't Hollywood. This is as real as it gets. Discovery's Sunday Showcase. Only on Discovery Channel.
And what exactly would Marcus have eaten? Suzanne Evans, an expert on Roman cookery, took me to buy a typical Roman lunch.
So he would probably live mainly on things like cabbage.
Cabbage, oh, cabbage, yeah, we got cabbage here.
Yeah.
Definitely garlic. I think we should
right.
have a couple of garlics.
Okay. Did everybody eat garlic?
Well, no. I think he would generally try to spice up his rather bland diet, but it was included in many recipes, as it is today.
Tomatoes, should we?
No, sorry, no tomatoes.
No tomatoes.
Mexico tomatoes.
So, all these Italian sauces
Sorry,
and things...
can't have any of those.
Can't have any,
Nope,
all got tomato
none of those,
in them.
nope.
Rice?
Very rich people had rice. A good trade link with Asia, but no rice for
Rice would have been
No.
a sort of again a luxury.
Absolutely luxury. Those gluttonous, rich Romans eating that.
Look at them eating rice.
Okay, chickpeas. Here we are. Oh, down here.
Good.
I think one of the reasons also the problems of preparing the food at home, because chickpeas need to be soaked overnight, simmered for an hour and a half. He's got to keep his fire going that long just to cook his chickpeas. This would bind it all together. So after simmering it, then you would mix it up with flour. So you've got a kind of porridge with peas.
But this would be a kind of a treat for a
yes.
once a week or something like that?
Yeah, perhaps something like that. He made a particularly good pair of shoes. He might get a reward from his butcher.
So this is a kind of a thick, coarse, dried sausage.
Yep. Plenty of fat. Lots of flavour in it, so lots of spices.
So what we're going to hear is basically the ingredients that Marcus would have for a meal for Marcus.
Yes,
really.
yes.
Except they wouldn't have been like this. He'd have bought them ready-made.
He would have had it ready-made.
Yeah.
Convenient living for him, really, wasn't it?
I suppose it's really like nowadays when, if you're not a peasant living off the land growing your own food, you rely on other people pre-packaging your meals like this. You can see the difference between, a modern shopping expedition and what an ancient Roman would have, of Marcus's class would have had. It does look a bit sad, doesn't it?
I'm sorry for him now.
I'm sure when you've cooked it up, it'll be delicious.
In a reconstructed Roman kitchen, Suzanne reconstructed a Roman workman's lunch.
We might add a few chopped herbs, a bit of rosemary, ground up, perhaps some sage leaves. So he'd want a bit of flavour in it, and this is a pretty upmarket takeaway, so adding those herbs. Let's add a few ripped cabbage leaves into it as well. There we go. So now, after these have gone in, really it's the time that the cabbage takes to cook.
So what's he going to pay for this dish?
Well, a couple of new soles on a pair of shoes, perhaps. Morning's work,
So they do
maybe.
like that. He might be bartering his food.
Yes, he might be. And it's very difficult to work out exchange rates.
Yeah. So what's this dish called?
Pulsum, Terry, yes, pulsum. Looks a little bit repulsive.
So this is
Here's your
flavoured
Terry.
cheese, is this?
It is, and really strong flavour of garlic.
Garlic. So what garlic first,
So you want your whole clove of garlic in there. The whole lot.
The whole lot.
Yep.
I see.
Little salt.
Yeah. I just sort of mash it up.
Push it against the grits at the bottom.
Oh, I see those grits at the bottom are actually
Quite hard work.
Did aristocracy use garlic?
A little in their cooking to flavour the sauces that went with some of the meat dishes, certainly. Really, the poor were the people that used garlic. In fact, it was well known about their stinking breath, I think.
Oh, I see. So if you smelt of garlic, you were generally lower class.
I would say so, yes.
What
now,
other
we're
herbs,
going to add kind of weed-like herbs, really, but this one is lovage.
Now, again, would these be sort of things that the aristocracy would use, or would they have different kinds of herbs?
They would have all sorts of varieties, but many more than these from the takeaway. Spices that have been brought from all parts of the Roman Empire.
Whereas this lovage and...
Lovage, and this one is rue.
Rue, that's...
Pepper flavour.
That's something that might be just growing in the roadside.
Yes, could well be. Could well be, and certainly outside the back door of our takeaway here.
So you've got our lower class spices all mashed up.
Smells wonderful.
Yes, it does. It's great, actually. It's really good smell, actually. It's really good, yeah. I'm not being snooty about them at all. So now we're going to mix the ricotta into it. I think that's enough.
Yep.
Have a little taste of it. It's delicious, actually. It's got a little hot.
Very hot. Hot taste with a lot of garlic in it.
Is that the lovage, the hot?
The lovage, no, it's the rue.
The rue,
that would give that peppery.
Oh.
That's really good.
It is good. He would have had it with bread, I think, don't you?
Oh, well, got some bread here.
Have some bread, yes.
Yeah, this was made this morning, was
Made
it?
this morning.
It's not Roman bread.
Well, it's to a Roman recipe.
Okay.
It's got things like honey, olive oil,
Yeah.
and stone ground flour, yeast, of course. It's good.
Good bread, actually.
Yep.
Okay, so what would Marcus be drinking with this, then?
Well, I suppose generally speaking, he would stick to water. He would have water to drink with his breakfast. But on a high day, holiday, end of a good week, he might go for some mulsum.
Mulsum?
Mulsum,
Was
yes.
it a kind of wine, is this?
It is. This is a modern equivalent of mulsum.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So is this diluted already?
This would be as it is now to drink, already diluted, but generally when you were making it, it would be thicker, then you'd water it down, add honey and spices. You imagine it warmed, perhaps?
Yeah, warmed, it'd be quite nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's quite sort of sweetish, yeah.
That's the honey.
Very alcoholic?
Yes, quite potent.
So they were getting drunk all the time, were they?
Bad form, really, to do that, to get drunk. Bad manners.
Well, the Romans didn't...
No, not as much as people think they did.
Because you just imagine they're all lying around, they're getting drunk.
No, I don't think... Obviously it happened, but not all the time.
Yeah. I heard something somewhere, somebody saying that a lot of people ate standing up a lot of the time. I mean,
Yes, you could, at a bar, you would do it, taverna, you would do it then. But generally, it is known that Romans lay down, the aristocrats lay down to eat, and their servants and their slaves.
but that was a sign that how well off you were. You were so well off.
Absolutely right.
Not only could you sit down, but you could lie
down as well.
Dining for the rich and famous was a totally different experience.
Well, this is how the nobs ate, reclining on a triclinium. Salve. Of course, eating lying down was really just a way of showing off. It demonstrated not only that you had enough time to be able to indulge in long meals, but also you could afford servants and slaves. Because it's actually quite awkward supporting yourself on one arm. You can only use one hand, so you can't use a knife. And you have to have somebody to cut your food up for you. Fingerstyle buffet was de rigueur on the triclinium. And it's all a far cry from Marcus grabbing a quick bite at a street stall. And this gulf between rich and poor widened as the empire developed. The few became crazily rich, while the majority were trapped in poverty. However, there was one thing that all Roman citizens, whether rich or poor, could enjoy almost as equals.
On January 29th,
this journal is the key to finding Atlantis.
the journey begins.
Take us back, boy!
The mystery unfolds.
This is for real.
And the legend comes to life.
Welcome to the city of Atlantis.
Oh my.
Bigger. Bolder. The reinvented Camry. The best-selling car in North America just got better. Beautiful.
At AGF, there's one thing we realize. Eventually, everyone retires.
Not a drop. Dry as a bone.
AGF, what are you doing after work?
Olivieri, a fresh take on tradition. Discover our fresh pasta and sauce.
Introducing AOL Canadian version 7.0, the easy way to get online.
You just plug it in and go. It's that easy.
No more computer mumbo jumbo.
You've got mail.
Email is the best.
I send instant messages.
I just type the keyword in and boom, I'm there.
Everyone in my family gets their own email address.
Parental controls help me safeguard my kids.
Free 24-hour customer service.
Now anyone can feel like a computer genius.
AOL. So easy, no wonder it's the world's most popular online service. For your 3-month free trial CD, call today.
As the Roman Empire expanded, the wealthy grew staggeringly rich, while the poor remained badly housed and often undernourished. There was one thing, however, that brought rich and poor together, and that was water. The Romans were crazy about the stuff. They built huge stone conduits to bring it into the very centers of their cities at phenomenal expense. But it was worth it, because for most Romans, the baths were the high point of the day. And here, in the city of Herculaneum, the eruption of Vesuvius has miraculously preserved the baths in almost pristine condition.
Gets off the boat, and this is the first place he comes to.
Yes, he comes and he finds this great open area. And in the
If Marcus, our shoemaker, had come to Herculaneum to look for work, this is where he'd have made his first port of call. Because the baths were one place where everybody met everybody else.
Oh, it's so beautiful here, though.
Isn't it stunning? Yes.
But he'd be able to come in here and use these facilities.
Well, I think the whole idea of the ancient town is to try and bring the community together. And the baths are their great chance where every citizen, however rich or poor, you only pay a couple of pennies to come into. It's almost a symbolic amount. Maybe, if you're lucky, some rich man will declare a free week of bathing or something and pay for it himself.
Marx is naked, presumably, at this point. He's coming through doing a bit of business or something.
Oh, and one way you'll be able to tell what Marx's status is how brown he is. Because the rich get time to sunbathe, to exercise in the gymnasium. And the cult of the body beautiful is there. And probably our Marcus will have a white flabby body. He's just a cobbler.
Because he's just working the whole time.
And so, you know, this is one of the public shame of not having a beautiful body exercised in the gym. Shows you haven't quite made it.
But even with water, the wealthy seemed to have won out. As always, there were those who knew how to take advantage of the situation. Sextus Julius Frontinus, a former governor of Britain and the man charged with supervising Rome's water supply, noted that
many of the landowners through whose land the water is carried tapped the conduit, with the result that public aqueducts stopped their courses for private individuals.
The rich used water for pleasure and for display. The Anglo-American project in Pompeii has been able to chart how the new Roman owners of one house celebrate their increasing wealth with mosaics in every room, a new bath suite, and even a swimming pool in the middle of the house.
All right. So what is this called? This is the
peristyle.
And it's like it's a cloister, isn't it?
It's the internal garden, yeah. And there are a number of posh rooms off there, dining rooms, at least 3 off here. And you have a swimming pool in the middle, with some planting and garden around.
They'd actually jump in there with their... That'd be the temptation,
Yeah, on a day like this. There'll be loads of fountains playing as well as the pool here, and that's all coming from the piped aqueduct. Now, none of that's being used for domestic use. So it's all for showing off, it's all for showing for display, and it shows how much the rich are using their resources for display and simply saying how rich they are. And one of the ways they do it is to see that the gushing water that goes with the fountains runs out in the street.
So as you're walking past the street...
So you'd see it there. But the only way you get at the running water is from the fountains that are in the streets themselves, the public fountains that he could have access to.
The rich and powerful in ancient Rome were refreshingly uninhibited about flaunting their wealth, and a poor shoemaker like Marcus would have had little doubt about where to apply for work.
Wherever you find rich men, you find poor men too, because the rich men need the poor men to look after them, to be their slaves, their servants, their supporters, their tradesmen. One obvious thing for him to do is to go and call on one of the rich houses. You knock on the door. You don't even have to knock on the door because the rich characteristically keep their doors open and so that you can walk straight in.
So,
he
might have come up here. Can I get any chance of job? But wouldn't I need to get an introduction?
You tuck your forelock and... Excuse me, boss. Have you got anything for
Get out! Oh,
my
God! Oh, bloody rich. All the knobs, they're all the same, aren't they?
That door goes straight to stairs leading up. And that door leads, it's a rather long corridor that goes into a sort of courtyard. And there's a flat beyond there, and there's a little set of stairs up at the back there that goes on to another flat up there. Where the poor live, what the poor do, is the hardest to trace because they spend least money. What the rich do, you know, if it's putting down beautiful paving stones or creating a lovely atrium or whatever, it survives, it's solid. This has a rather flimsy structure made of wood with bits of stone in between. And of course that's the first thing to go in an earthquake or an eruption and so on. And typically in the historical record you don't see the flimsier structures where the poor people lived.
Modern scholars have analysed bones, and they find bone after bone in corpse after corpse is suffering from serious dietary deficiency. The poor in the cities of the Roman Empire were very poor indeed. In the beginning, before the Romans conquered, there would be much more equal society. The gap between the rich and the poor would have been much more modest. But when you were conquered by Rome, the rich Romans come in, Romans exploit. An empire is an exploitative system.
Millions of women worldwide have chosen Nivea Visage Q10 as their anti-wrinkle cream. Nivea Visage Q10 Wrinkle Control with natural coenzyme Q10 visibly reduces the appearance of wrinkles.
Thank you, Q10.
Only from Nivea Visage.
Bring home the mystery.
This journal is the key to finding the lost continent of Atlantis.
The adventure.
Welcome to the city of Atlantis.
The heroes.
Boy, I am so excited, I can't even hold it in.
Hard to believe he's still single.
Perhaps we can save our future.
Let's do it!
Now things are getting good.
Atlantis, The Lost Empire. Coming to Disney DVD and video Tuesday, January 29th.
Calgary, Montreal, Halifax, Chicago, Dallas, Oslo, Auckland, Osaka. Whether it's around your city or around the globe, AT&T Canada can help keep you connected. That's because our high-speed network can give you fast, reliable connections virtually anywhere you do business. Small world, eh?
AIC. Buy, hold, and prosper.
Nobody knows where the dream begins. The tiny spark that becomes a flame, that becomes a fire, that turns into gold. And when that dream comes true, the true champion begins all over again.
Hi, I'm Katrina LeMay-Doan, and thanks to sponsors like Daimler Chrysler Canada, I'm living the Olympic dream all over again.
Daimler Chrysler Canada and its retailers. proud to support Canada's best.
Rome was the heart of a vast empire. It attracted in the poor and the itinerant from all over what we now call Italy and beyond. And if Marcus, our shoemaker, wasn't able to find work in Pompeii or Herculaneum, he may well have turned to the great city itself.
If Marcus had come here, what would he have found? Surely life at the heart of the world's greatest empire must have been a bed of roses.
Rome conquers the whole of the Mediterranean basin. Between 200 BC and the birth of Christ, say, Rome moves from being the largest town of Italy to the capital of the whole of the Mediterranean. And by 0 BC, 1 AD, basically the whole wealth of the Mediterranean basin, from Spain to Egypt, Syria to Greece, is pouring into the city of Rome.
Rome sucked in all the wealth from the Mediterranean, and this created enormous disparities between not only the wealth of Rome and the outposts of empire, but also within Rome itself.
The city of Rome, it was immense by ancient standards. 1 million people, the streets were paved with gold. There was a vision that if you go to Rome, you can make a fortune. And no doubt some people did. But it was also a place where the mortality was fantastically high. You go to the baths, the sick people bathe first, then the women, then the men. It was like modern hospitals. That's where you catch a disease. Cleanliness and dirt go hand in hand. Great holes just outside the city in which corpses, shit, ordure from animals, carcasses from dead animals are just thrown all together. The smell must have been horrendous. So it's a place of opportunity, a place of dirt, a place of crime, but it's a place where you see temples glimmering with glistening gold roofs, palaces such as no one's ever seen, eyes opened.
Nothing Marcus would have seen in Pompeii could have prepared him for the sights of Rome. These buildings are on a totally different scale from anything he would have come across before. They flaunt the wealth and power of the men who built them. The Senate controlled the vast wealth of the Roman Empire, not for the benefit of people like Marcus, but for themselves. They operated like mafia dons, appropriating for themselves whatever they could get their hands on.
There's a bloody society in which basically emperors kill aristocrats. And in turn, aristocrats gather together and kill emperors. So it's a violent society at the top, very volatile, very unpredictable. But within that, the empire gets administered by aristocrats growing up to govern Britain or govern Germany.
The Rome that Marcus would have become familiar with is still to be found in these narrow alleys, amongst these workshops and little factories that still exist today very much as they always have done. So, what would Marcus, the country mouse, have thought of life in the greatest city on earth?
One of the biggest differences he'd have found to life in Pompeii would have been where he had to live. You see, the majority of Romans lived in large apartment blocks up to 5 or even 6 stories high. And behind me is the only 5-story apartment block still standing from ancient times.
This is a real Roman street and a real Roman block of houses.
Oh, it's a bit rougher than Herculaneum, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's on just a completely different scale.
Yeah.
But if you think of all those little shops and workshops of medieval Rome,
so
this is the ancient equivalent.
We're going into a workshop now.
You come in from the street to this. There's a single room here in which they can, whatever their trade is, they can do it, and the customers can come in from the street. And they can live. Their private quarters are up above.
So that's where the artisans, the people working in the shop,
right.
they'd be living up above there.
We decided to take a closer look at the living quarters that Marcus might have found for himself above his cobbler's shop.
It's got a further to climb, hasn't it?
No, he'll be clambering for a long time to come. We're only at the beginning here. We're up on the 4th floor here.
I hate to say it, this looks like a corridor.
It is a corridor.
I thought
and
they
it's a
invented
corridor.
in the 17th century or something.
No, the Romans were right there. And it's a corridor that leads to other corridors.
Oh, right, yes.
Because if we turn
See,
down
yeah.
here, we've got to imagine there's a door here.
Yeah.
You know, we're going through a bit of wood.
Okay, so what, this is the beginning of an apartment?
So let's knock and go in. And this is then the corridor to one unit, an apartment unit. And we can see over here 1, 2, 3 doorways going in.
Yeah.
Do you see they've got little windows above them?
Nobody's in it. No, they can't see us. Here we go. A smallish, narrow room. It's got a window that way, though. OK, well, let's say then Marcus takes this back room.
OK.
It's a pretty...
We've given you the worst possible room.
So when Marcus finally gets his room, he'd have furnished it in a simple style like this. Except I don't think he'd have had a fancy couch like that. It's far too high class for our Marcus. And although there's archaeological evidence that the Romans had wicker chairs like that, I don't think our Marcus could have afforded one. Or a fancy sideboard with the household gods above it. And he certainly wouldn't have had a chair to sit on. A bucket, a stool and a mattress. I suppose that's all he'd have.
Many of the apartment buildings of ancient Rome were also falling down on the job. The famous politician and orator Cicero was himself a landlord, and he complained,
"2 of my buildings have fallen down, and the rest have large cracks. Not only the tenants, but even the mice have moved out."
Of course, Rome was too proud to allow that sort of thing to happen to their public buildings. But there was something which they were even prouder of.
Compare the idle pyramids or the useless famous works of the Greeks with these indispensable structures.
The Romans were very keen on hygiene. Well, they had to be. It was bad enough in a city like Pompeii with 20,000 citizens. But Rome itself, with its 1 million inhabitants, had to come up with another solution. And the one they came up with was a very modern one. They created an underground network of sewers. And this is the main outlet into the Tiber. And it's still working to this day. It's been said that 1 million people produce 70,000 kilos of feces every day. That's roughly my body weight in solids every 2 minutes. No wonder some of the sewers were big enough to drive a horse and cart through.
Even small towns considered hygiene a key element of good living.
Here in Pompeii, there seems to be plenty of evidence of indoor toilets. There are loads of these downpipes which have gone into a cesspit or into a sewer and would have been connected with the toilet on an upper floor there.
However, if you were poor, an alleyway would probably have to suffice. Though, curiously, there was one group of tradesmen who were only too happy for you to pee outside their shop.
So our man Marcus, while he's wandering around Pompeii looking for work, if he gets taken short and he wants to do the laundry people a favour, he might take a pee in their pot here, standing outside the shop. Because urine is rich in ammonia and was in demand by clothes cleaners. Nice to be able to do somebody a favour by having a pee.
But what if food was scarce? Or what if Marcus simply wasn't earning enough to be able to eat? Did Roman society have any mechanism for dealing with people on the breadline?
The pagan society is by and large not a caring society, it's not a pro-beggar society. There's no obligation to give. But there's an exception. Rome had got to greatness because it was a citizen society. The Roman armies, the armed citizens, had fought for the glory of Rome, and citizens had votes. So in the city of Rome, there were monthly donations of bread and frequent gladiatorial shows or circuses, bread and circuses. So citizens received a regular monthly ration of free wheat.
Bread and circuses kept the underprivileged masses of Rome quiet. But the biggest draw wasn't the gladiators, but horse racing. There were 4 teams: red, white, blue, and green. Fans dressed in their team's colours. They sat together, they chanted in unison, they sang team songs together, and caused riots together. There was plenty of betting, and in later times the fans sported outrageous haircuts. And of course, it was a great pick-up place. The Roman poet Ovid, in his famous book The Art of Love, wrote,
"Don't neglect the horse races if you're looking for a place to meet your girlfriend. A circus crowded with people offers many advantages. Sit right next to a girlfriend and squeeze up beside her as closely as possible. Be sure to ask with great interest which horses are running, and then immediately cheer for the same one that she cheers for. Perhaps a speck of dust will settle on your girlfriend's breast. It often happens. Be sure to brush it off with your hand. If her skirt is trailing too far along the ground, carefully lift the soiled part off the dust. At once you'll receive a reward for your careful concern. You'll be able to look at her legs and she won't mind. Yes, the circus provides many opportunities for initiating a love affair."
Marcus may have been a poor cobbler, but that's no reason why he wouldn't have got married. So let's give him a wife. Let's call her Judith. What sort of a relationship could the average Roman couple expect?
It's very difficult for us to know about the lives of simple folk in Rome. All the literature is upper-class literature. That's not quite true. There's some simple memorials from the lower classes expressing affection, husbands to wives, wives to husbands, on death. So perhaps it's affection after death rather than during life. But as far as we can tell, Roman women could have expected reasonable independence in the sense of owning property for themselves, being able to choose their husbands, being able to divorce their husbands if they wish, simply because they wished.
What kind of a life is his wife going to have? Is it a very restricted life as a Roman woman?
It's not half as restricted as Greek women. You could go to parties, you could go to dinner, you could mix with men who weren't part of your family. And we know that, and some Greeks are actually shocked by it. And she would probably participate in the business. I mean, if he were a baker, she would probably be at least taking some part in it. So that you obviously, in the non-elite classes, you have women shopping, working. They could go to the baths.
What I'd like to know is, how did the men and women of ancient Rome manage to find so much leisure time?
On January 29th,
This journal is the key to finding Atlantis.
the journey begins.
Make us proud, boy!
The mystery unfolds.
This is for real.
And the legend comes to life.
Welcome to the city of Atlantis.
Extra money can help seniors take the pressure off. I'm Gordon Pate. For years, I've been writing about ways seniors can use their home to provide extra money without having to sell or move. One option I believe you should consider is a reverse mortgage from the Canadian Home Income Plan.
How much money can your home give you? Find out now. Call the Canadian Home Income Plan at 1-877-469-2447. Homeowners 62 or older can convert 10 to 40% of your home's value into tax-free money.
We wouldn't want to start making payments again.
You won't have to. No repayment is required for as long as you live in your home.
Do I lose control of my home?
No, just like with a regular mortgage, you can choose to sell it at any time. Title is still in your name.
This could really take the pressure off.
Call today for your free personal estimate and this self-assessment guide. Find out how a reverse mortgage might work for you.
If, like most seniors, your home is where you're comfortable, you owe it to yourself to look into the Canadian Home Income Plan.
This is great pizza. Look at these toppings. This is takeout pizza at its finest.
It's not takeout.
Oh, I know pizza, and this crust spells takeout.
Yes, but it's not takeout.
If it's not takeout, how come it tastes like takeout?
It's not takeout.
Oh, come on. Look, taste. This is takeout.
Okay. You're right. It's takeout.
Yes!
McCain Rising Crust Pizza.
I knew it.
Can you tell it from takeout?
sportier. The reinvented Camry SE, the best-selling car in North America, just got better. Sweet.
How is it possible for Roman citizens to spend all afternoon at the baths or every other day at the games? Could it be an effect of that secret economic weapon of the Romans, slavery? And if it was, what I'd like to know is, was it worse to be a poor but free Roman or a slave? Most slaves were captured in battle, so there are obviously plenty of them. But how many? Could there really have been enough to do all the work that needed doing?
Well, there's an old estimate that says that for Italy as a whole, you have 3 million slaves in a population of 8. So 3 out of 8 people are slaves. This could be high, but certainly the last century BC, at least 1 million captives were sold as slaves, and many of them arrived in Italy. And we know that the big villas on the coast had staffs of 40 to 60 slaves. These had to be shipped to Italy, they had to be sold in slave markets, they had to be acquired by landlords. And this is without counting the more educated people, the Greeks and the household slaves and the tutors and, you know, dancing girls.
One place you can absolutely guarantee finding a slave in these baths is working here in the furnace. This is the hot spot, the really unpleasant spot to be in the baths. Massive, great cooker here with great big bronze cauldron. And keeping that thing down there stoked and full of wood was a very hot, sweaty job.
Pretty enclosed space, isn't it?
Yeah, it will have been very unpleasant working conditions. But that's what a world of slaves is all about, that you can make people work.
The slaves don't have any union to complain about.
No, absolutely. You string them up on a load of crosses if they form a union.
Yeah. So slaves really were the lowest of the low in ancient Rome. I mean,
yes, I think there's a big difference between a slave and a poor man, even suppose an illegal immigrant. Illegal immigrants in Italy nowadays get pretty close to slavery, but there's this enormous difference that they are still entitled to some sort of self-respect. An ancient slave has no self-respect. You're not allowed to have you are nothing. You have no rights, no human rights of any sort whatsoever.
How did slaves and owners get on together? And who could own slaves? For example, could Marcus, a cobbler, have owned a slave?
He could easily have owned 1 or 2 slaves, maybe a girl to help his wife in the kitchen and a slave to help him. I think it's really standard that, what are we calling it, the middle class, but the artisan class did actually own slaves, and they would live with them in their household.
Punishment for wayward slaves was harsh. They could be executed without trial. Well, after all, they were just pieces of property. They could also be branded and collared. One slave wore an ID tag which read, "I have run away, capture me, and when you return me to my master Zaninus, you will receive a reward." It's rather like those lorries that drive around now with "How am I driving" on the back. So let's say Marcus has done well enough at making shoes to be able to afford a slave. What would it have cost him?
They can't be cheap because you have to feed them. It's not like a car. You have to pay the insurance, not just the capital costs, it's the running costs that you have to consider. Formally speaking, depending on beauty and age and strength, a slave cost 4 times the annual income of a peasant. Quite a lot. It's in $20,000, £20,000, something in that order. It's very difficult to give a modern figure.
Maybe owning a slave in ancient Rome was a bit like owning a motor car. Some people could afford a spanking new Alfa Romeo, while others had to be content with a clapped-out second-hand model. Young boys were expensive, say a Jaguar. Young girls, less so, a Toyota perhaps. The Emperor Nero had a tutor by the name of Seneca, and he bemoaned the treatment of slaves by the nouveau riche of his day. Of course, he may have been romanticizing the past, but there's a ring of truth about what he says. As the rich get richer and more removed from their inferiors, so they come to treat them less and less like human beings.
The slightest murmur is repressed by the rod. Even a chance sound, a cough, a sneeze, or a hiccup is visited by the lash. All night long, they must stand about, hungry and dumb. The slaves of former days were permitted to converse not only in their master's presence, but actually with him. Nowadays, we Romans are excessively haughty, insulting, and cruel.
Enter the Discover Atlantis The Lost Empire sweepstakes now. Call the toll-free number on your screen or log on to Discovery Channel's website, exn.ca, right now and complete the entry form. It's your chance to win Disney's Atlantis The Lost Empire on Disney DVD and a family trip for four to experience the mythical Atlantis Paradise Island Resort in the Bahamas. Call or log on right now and don't miss Disney's Atlantis The Lost Empire on Disney DVD and video January 29th.
Millions of women worldwide have chosen Nivea Visage Q10 as their anti-wrinkle cream. Nivea Visage Q10 Wrinkle Control with natural coenzyme Q10 visibly reduces the appearance of wrinkles.
Thank you, Q10.
Only from Nivea Visage.
AT&T Canada's broadband technology can carry your company's voice, video, and data around the world at speeds over 2 billion bits per second. Buckle up.
One way or another, you'll be living it up in a brand new Hyundai. AIC. Buy, hold, and prosper.
If you want great body that lasts, you need the right physique. Not that kind of physique. Physique 20-hour volumizing collection of shampoo, conditioner, and styling products. With Physique, get 20 hours of unstoppable volume and body. Yeah, that kind of body. Physique 20-hour volumizing collection. Give your hair the physique it needs.
Hidden Worlds Week, brought to you by Nivea Visage Q10. Nivea brings your face to life. By Disney's Atlantis, The Lost Empire, on Disney DVD and video January 29th. And by AT&T Canada.
Slavery was big business, very big business. Rome had plenty of millionaires, and Tacitus mentions a city prefect who had 400 slaves in his mansion. The whole Roman Empire rested on the sweating and beaten backs of its slaves.
It must feel horrid to be a slave in a society in which there are free people. So it's easy to think that slaves, the one thing that slaves wanted was to be free. And some slaves saved up for a lifetime to buy their freedom. That's certainly true. And always slaves were under the threat of being flogged or crucified, killed. So that must have been terrible. But on the other hand, and Romans were conscious of this, once you were freed, you were responsible for finding your own food. So slaves had someone to care for them, which a free person didn't. The free people were by themselves.
There was no welfare state in ancient Rome, and the handicapped or deformed were more often than not singled out at birth.
You notice there are no orphanages in ancient Rome.
No need to have an orphanage, no need even to have contraception or to have abortion, because they frequently practice just exposure of children, unwanted children. There is absolutely no reason why a mother should not expose a child. You're allowed to do it because the child may be malformed. You certainly wouldn't bring up a malformed child. You simply expose it and let it die.
Where would you put it? How would you expose it?
You might simply take it to the town rubbish dump.
The same Romans that conquered the Mediterranean, that built aqueducts and amphitheatres, also dumped unwanted children with the city garbage. But whatever life was like for ordinary Romans, for those who lived around the Bay of Naples in 79 AD, it came to a horrifyingly abrupt end. On the 24th of August, the volcano Vesuvius erupted. For the people of Pompeii and Herculaneum, time simply stopped. It stopped for the rich and the poor alike. The cook in the cook shop, the prostitute by the bar, the slave traders in the forum, the sportsmen at their bets. It stopped too for Marcus, his wife and family.
Behind the glorious story of the Roman Empire, the story of military campaigns and imperial triumphs, there lies another story, the one that actually shaped the lives of people like Marcus. It's the story of how Rome was run as a mafia-like business, of senators worth $30 million who supported a system that let the poor go to the wall while they supported free trade and low taxes for the businessmen. It's the story of a society in which the noble families flaunted their wealth while the majority drifted into relative poverty. A society based on inequality, on the tantalizing luxury that was possible for a few, as long as the vast proportion of the population had no rights at all or could be fooled into compliance with bread and circuses. A society that had no need for orphanages or contraception because unwanted children could simply be left on the town rubbish dump or turned into slaves.
It's the story of millions of people like Marcus, the people who actually were the Roman Empire, but whose history is so often hidden.
Tomorrow, dive through the depths to what was there all along. Tune in for your chance to win on Hidden Worlds Week. Coming up next, the stories you won't see anywhere else. Your journey begins on @Discovery Canada. It's what's really happening.